can often be found gathered in great circles, pecking one another into staggering delirium. Once in this state of sweaty, red-faced pique, the hackneyed will often engage in what I have come to know as the explosion of mutually assured ruin, in which they devour one another in a great burst of political bloodletting. In these epic battles, the hackneyed will attempt to cripple their adversaries with great ideological hammers, raining down blows, crushing blows of hyperbole, until one party remains standing, whimsical and punch-drunk from the effort of it all. This is when I take action. When the smell of blood is in the water, I slowly circle the crippled and unaware hackneyed as they frantically tread water. When the end comes, it comes quickly, but it is not without pain. The realization that one has been laid low by one's own values is often a shock to the system, and one I have seen written plainly on more than one face during the course of my political career. The plight of the hackneyed is heartbreaking. It is the vacant gaze of utter and complete devastation and realization. It betrays the devastation at the lost promise of power and the realization that I was its engineer.
Welcome, dear viewers, to CouchWarrior TV on YouTube. I'm the CouchWarrior. And you are who you are. I appreciate your attendance this evening. As you can see, I'm just screwing around with some new assets, trying to figure out how all this stuff is going to come together. Trying to figure out the formula, such as it is. So, yeah, it's all coming together. So, a lot of different assets that I need. I'm going to need some video. I am going to definitely need some artwork for the lobby. I'm going to use it for some other stuff as well. I'm playing around with some watercolor. This one you're looking at now happens to be a simulation of acrylic paint. So, yeah, we'll see. But essentially, what I'm going to do is I am going to make me a bunch of screenshots and I'm going to put them into some kind of a slideshow. Yes, I am a fireball every night. Okay. It's not just because I'm wearing this shirt. But, so, what are we doing tonight? Well, basically, I mean, probably the biggest thing that I need to do at this point is I need to come up with some kind of prologue for this story. And the voice you heard earlier, if you hadn't seen it on Discord, that is Cassius Decianus. It is a piece that he is reciting called The Hackneyed, where he basically breaks down what differentiates him as a politician from all the others out there. And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to lay out a script that I will use to make a prologue for this story. I'm anticipating that what this will be is probably a 10 to 15 minute long prologue that will also double as a trailer. The basis of that will be also used as the basis for an ongoing intro for the series. So I need to come up with the outline of the scenes we need for that so that I can start doing the writing. Now, the piece that you heard just now was about 3 paragraphs or so. That is kind of the opening of that monologue. Essentially, what I do know of the prologue is that the prologue is going to be it is going to be a setup for the story as told by Cassius. And in case you missed it, my plan here is that Cassius Decianus will be the narrator for this story. So when we hear prepared pieces, a lot of that, if it's a narrator's voice, is going to come from Cassius. Now, I don't know how often Cassius is going to speak with the voice of the narrator. I haven't determined how often that's going to happen, if it's going to be every episode. I think it would make sense that in every single episode, Cassius at least have an opener, even if it's just a few lines. What I don't want to do is I don't want to get so tied into that format that I bog myself down in work so that when stream night comes and I haven't done that writing, I give up, right? Or I do something like I try to punt and it doesn't work out, right? Those pieces, I think, are designed to be written and read. And I'm thinking about also probably injecting some additional written pieces in the form of pre-recorded pieces that are on my sound deck down here. And that's what I just did. Like this one, I wrote it last night. I recorded it last night. I uploaded a sample of it to Discord. If you want to check it out yourself, you can download it there and listen to it. But I put it on my sound deck. So just now, I just wanted to test what it was like for me to activate one of my own sound files from there. Now, the question I have for you is, when you heard the voice, were you hearing it in both ears? Or were you only hearing it in one ear and then the second ear came in about 3/4 of the way through? Because I was only hearing it in one ear and I fiddled around with the cables and it started coming in both ears. So let me know. If you feel like you missed any of the lead into it, I need to know that as well. But I'll go back and listen to the recording, obviously, but that could be a problematic thing. All right, so tonight we're going to put together the outline for the prologue, and I'm going to discuss the format of that. Didn't hear anything at all, and then heard it in both ears. Popped in halfway through. Okay, hang on. Let's do it again. I'm interested in getting this right. Because a lot of this, almost all of this, I'm going to be doing live, with the exception of the prologue. The prologue will be pre-recorded. Let's try this again. So when I've got people in the lobby, I can have music going, right? And then what I'm going to do is we're going to do our normal slide routine. Pop. 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 And I'm thinking about, rather than going straight to the story loading slide, I'm going to go to some kind of narrative screen, I think, where we get some narration going, which I think would be really cool. So I'm thinking some kind of a splashy image that basically says to people it's narration time or whatever. Something like that. And then the music comes down and then I hit the deck. Literally.
There are surprisingly few who understand the true nature of political power. Many think they know it, and they espouse traits such as idealism, integrity, tenacity, intractability, when in fact it is nothing of the sort. These are, in fact, the qualities of base-born, colorless hacks who infect the halls of government. These disabilities they refer to as laudable traits turn the ears of a certain few who worship at the altar of lost causes, but they will never gain a man the power to truly govern. I find it amusing to observe them as they totter around the capital like infants, playing at games of politics and stacking alliances like so many wooden blocks. I have come to refer to them as the hackneyed. The hackneyed are filled to bursting with bluster and puffed-up grandeur. Much like roosters, they strut about, crowing of their many accomplishments and perceived status. They can often be found gathered in great circles, pecking one another into staggering delirium. Once in this state of sweaty, red-faced pique, the hackneyed will often engage in what I have come to know as the explosion of mutually assured ruin, in which they devour one another in a great burst of political bloodletting. In these epic battles, the hackneyed will attempt to cripple their adversaries with great ideological hammers, raining down blows, crushing blows of hyperbole, until one party remains standing, whimsical and punch-drunk from the effort of it all. This is when I take action. When the smell of blood is in the water, I slowly circle the crippled and unaware hackneyed as they frantically tread water. When the end comes, it comes quickly, but it is not without pain. The realization that one has been laid low by one's own values is often a shock to the system, and one I have seen written plainly on more than one face during the course of my political career. The plight of the hackneyed is heartbreaking. It is the vacant gaze of utter and complete devastation and realization. It betrays the devastation at the lost promise of power and the realization that I was its engineer.
You get the idea, right? Now that piece there was probably an hour's worth of work. I really fussed over the text on that, and it's about 3 paragraphs long. So that's the problem with Decianus. He's a good speaker. He's an excellent orator. He's, a very smart, wily individual, right? I mean, he is talking about how he slits the throats of other politicians, basically, is what he does, how he ruins people's careers and destroys people utterly, right? This is a man who's extremely smart, so when I'm writing from his perspective, and especially if he's going to be in the role of narrator, I got to be able to write efficiently. I can't, if it takes me an hour to write 3 paragraphs, that gives me a good sense for the scale I can handle with this story. If Decianus is the narrator, I can't be writing any more than 3 paragraphs per episode, if that, right? Having them pre-recorded is helpful because if I have a burst of creativity and I write a couple pages worth, I can chunk it out in advance, right? So that works out pretty good. So my thought was lead in the episode with Decianus, right? And then periodically we'll get written material for Kaleo as well, but that'll likely be things like letters or something like that. It'll be something else. It could be some monologue, or it could be some letters, or it could be, you know, something like that. Probably not journals. I'm trying to get away from doing journals, but anyway. And this piece of music was just random. That's the beautiful thing about the unpledged playlist now, is everything that I've got in there I've fussed over and hand selected. So I'm relatively sure that everything in there is going to be suitable for a lot of different things. I just need to pick something and play it. Okay, so let's do some shit here. Thanks for the compliments on the writing. Crushing blows of hyperbole. I did like that line a lot. There are a few lines in there I'm fairly proud of. But yeah, it's so much fun. I love the writing. It's fantastic. For me, though, it's weird, right? I can do that kind of writing, but it takes me a second to get into it. And what I've discovered is that a lot of times I need to go and engage in some activity that kind of greases the skids of creativity, if you will. Last night I was having trouble getting into it. And rather than spending the night sitting on the couch, I forced myself to get up, and I went out and I walked around the lake. I put in my headphones and I just listened to the unpledged playlist as I went, and I came back an hour later and I sat right down and cranked it out. So I just have to pick my battles, right? And, you know, if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to be able to write something for an episode. I would love to have narrative for every episode, but I'm not going to not stream if I don't have it. It's just that I would prefer to. And those pieces, I think, are important enough that doing them off the cuff worries me a little bit, because that's not how I speak naturally, right? I have to really think about what I'm doing. You're crafting it, right? So, I don't know. I feel like those have to be written. But we'll see. Like I said, that, you know, that the format is still something I'm working on here, so... All right. So, we are jumping out to Twinery. Some of you may know that I love Twine. It's a great tool for doing outlines and so forth. We're going to craft a new story here. And we're just going to call this... The Unpledged Prologue. Okay. So I thought what I would do is just lay this out one scene at a time. That might be the easiest way to do this. And kind of plot this out based on the topics that we need to cover in order to make sure that we are successfully communicating the gist of the story here. And what this is going to help me do is plot out the scenes that I'm going to need to get. Now, as I said earlier, this is not something that I intend to do in a live stream. This will be pre-recorded and used as a trailer. And I'm thinking that what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try something different. Rather than going into Skyrim and, you know, getting a collection of footage, I'm going to set up some scenes, and rather than recording footage, I'm going to take a series of screenshots that capture the story, and I'm going to string those screenshots together. And I'm going to use some artistic effects on them like this. I'm going to put them inside of a Adobe Premiere project, and I'm going to use some parallax effects on them to make them kind of float around and move. And we're going to tell the story in that way. And then in that way, we can also do some text overlay, some funky transitions. I think it could be really kind of interesting and different, a challenge. All right. So let's just think about the first thing that we need to communicate is we need to understand who is the narrator. So move this damn microphone. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. We need to know who the narrator is. Okay. We need to understand. I'm going to say. Who's the protagonist? Okay. What's the basis for the conflict between them? What is the inciting incident? And then we need to know what is the outcome of the incident. Yeah? So we know what the outcome of the incident is, and then that's not the end. At that point, we need to also understand what is the way forward, or how does the outcome change the world? Okay. So that's basically what I'm going to need. Okay. That's the structure. So then what we're going to do is we're going to fill in some details on each one of those and try to think of some things. Now we can think of the details, right? Details like who's going to be in the shot, What sort of shot do I need? What are the elements of that shot? Where could we get that shot? Are there any mods that would be required in order to get it? That kind of thing. Okay. So, let's see. So, who is the narrator? So, hopefully this isn't boring for anyone. If it is, you are welcome to leave if you must. But yeah, this is like for me like a necessary step. I need to get my brain wrapped around what I need to make here. And the thing is, think about that piece I just read. That was 3 paragraphs. It took about 3 minutes to go through. And all that it did was set the stage, telling us a little bit of something about who our narrator was. And all of that setup is just kind of the beginning. My intent was, let's talk a little bit about who Cassius is. And then we were going to contrast that. The plan is that Cassius will then begin to contrast what makes Kaleo different than the people that he's used to messing with. And in the course of that narrative, he is going to admit not fault, but he is going to admit having made mistakes, which I think will be sort of interesting. So let's look at this. So there's some narrative threads here. So we're going to have something in there that tells us about Cassius. We have something in there that tells us about his enemies. We have something in there that's going to tell us about the world that he inhabits. And in this particular case, it's going to be sort of the political world, right? Okay. All right, so let's save this. And what I'm going to do is I am going to change the format of these guys. Each of these represents some bit of narrative that we're going to work with. Okay. All right. So then the other thing I need to figure out are kind of what are the scenes that we're going to need. Now, if I think about what I've written already, what I've written already speaks to who his enemies are. It speaks to the world that he inhabits. It tells us something a little bit about Cassius, sort of in a roundabout way. It tells us something about his personality, but we'll make some notes in here. So we need to hear his name, which is, kind of an introduction. So I'm thinking that comes after that paragraph where he states that he's the engineer of everyone else's doom. The next paragraph he launches into, my name is Cassius Decianus, and I am such and so, and I am from such and so, or I am descended from the family, or my father is, General Decianus of such and so fame. We'll probably get a little flavor for how he feels about his father as well, and my guess is his opinions of his father aren't that much better than his opinions about anyone else, possibly worse, given the vague understanding we have of Cassius and his personality already. Okay? So then, we need to figure out some things about the scene. So we're going to need other politicians. We're going to need some extras. We're going to need some kind of official setting. It's going to have to be, something kind of formal, right? Kind of a formal government type of thing. A political setting. What else? I could use the court at Solitude. What I was thinking about doing, though, is because Cassius Decianus is supposed to be located in Cyrodiil, that we might introduce another mod. What I'd like to do is, I can pull in some kind of a major, like, castle mod, like Raiden Castle, for example, and I can probably get a whole bunch of different shots in that one place. Bruma's a possibility. The problem with Bruma is that Bruma is so well known now that people are going to look at it and say, hey, look, you're in Bruma, right? Where I really want to give them the idea that this is an unfamiliar place, hopefully Cyrodiil, the Imperial City. And I can do that with some interior shots. I think... See, now here's the advantage of doing it the way that I am with these Photoshop files, right? If I can go out on the web and I can get a good screenshot of the distant tower, the white gold tower, that quintessential shot of Cyrodiil, the Imperial City, and all this kind of stuff, I can process it through Photoshop and I can make it fit right in with all the other images. So we can set it right there. I think we just answered another question. So we're going to need some kind of a city view. Let's be more specific. I love this idea of getting a shot of the white gold tower. We might actually be able to grab a screenshot from one of the new mods, the Beyond Skyrim mods and stuff like that, right? If we look around, there might be some good shots there. Okay. So white gold tower. So we get a shot of the white gold tower. Okay, let's save this. Okay. So, we've got some things about the world that he inhabits. Let's do this. I'm making this structure up as I go along. Scene 1. Is a paragraph about the world he inhabits, right? Okay, so we've got a written paragraph about his world. We've got a shot that features the white gold tower, and that makes scene 1. So let's grab all of this. Move it up here. Okay. Okay, so political setting, other politicians. All right, so the next obvious thing is about his enemies. That's going to be scene 2. That's the second paragraph, right? In the second paragraph is where he's describing the hackneyed, which is other politicians. Okay. All right. So then we got scene 2. So now we're talking about Cassius. He's now he's talking about, he's kind of describing himself as you would describe a shark circling its prey, right? So that's going to be our scene 3. All right, now at this point, I'm feeling like just saying political setting is not descriptive enough. So we're going to fix that. Okay. So I can picture in my head what I want. It's just a question of how to describe it. I'm going to call it victim's background. Men in chains being hauled away. Okay. I didn't do that the way I wanted to. Okay, control. Let's get rid of this one. Call this setting. Okay, that's scene 3. So I imagine in this one we got the first 2 scenes, right? We get a shot of the white gold tower, and we get his voiceover as he describes his view of a true politician. Then we've got our second scene where we can see a bunch of politicians, you know, in the foreground, all gathered in a cluster, make it look like they're arguing with one another. And then behind them or off in the wings, we see Cassius. And in the final scene, we see some politicians in the background now being hauled away in chains or with their wrists bound, right? And we see Cassius in the foreground with a knowing look on his face or a smug look on his face. That kind of thing. All right. Okay. So I feel like that works. Okay, so what we've got are 3 scenes here and 3 paragraphs of writing that take care of this introduction to Cassius Decianus. And then there's going to be some slight variation to this piece here where I'll actually have him introduce himself, right? Where he mentions himself by name. Okay. Now, the thing that we're going to do is this is going to take a turn now as he begins to describe. We've got this man who is basically bragging that he's got one up on everyone. And I think that there is going to be some narrative in there where Cassius has at least one sentence or so where he's going to say something about the gift he has for judging people. And by that, I mean understanding their motivations and understanding how to manipulate them. Okay? But I think what we're going to see is that his admission of fallibility will come in the form of an admission. Trying to find the right size here. Okay, that'll do. It'll come in the form of an admission that he misjudged Kaleo. All right? He thought he could manipulate Kaleo, but discovered that he couldn't. And what this does is it sets up a couple of different things. It tells us something about Kaleo. It makes our bad guy Cassius fallible, which I think is desirable. Okay? But it also raises another really important question, and that question is going to be, if Cassius has such a gift for judging people, why specifically was he not able to predict what Kaleo was going to do? And that is going to get to the root of what our character is all about, which is this idea that no one, especially someone who is not intimately familiar with Kaleo as a person, can predict what the engine is going to do. Not everyone who's walking around on the street or in the halls of government has a quote-unquote engine inside them that creates this scary fight response, right? And there's no way that a man like Cassius, without knowing Kaleo very intimately, could have known that this entity or this tendency or this engine exists, which makes Kaleo an enigma to him and extremely unpredictable. Unfortunately, we'll have a scenario basically set up here where Cassius provokes the engine without, realizing the engine is there. He sets up a situation that brings the engine out in a particularly aggressive and bloodthirsty way, and he pays the price with his life the first time out. He never gets a chance to learn about Kaleo's engine or his dark side because that engine kills him the first time out, like right out of the gate, the first transgression, and Cassius is dead. All right, so it sets up this interesting relationship where Kaleo has some aspect of his personality that makes him immune to some of Cassius' manipulation, but at the same time also makes Kaleo a really intriguing subject of study for Cassius, which I think will set up an interesting dynamic, right? So what we're going to see is at the end of this, when we're learning about Cassius, we're also going to be learning some things about what caused Cassius to misjudge Kaleo. Because that'll be vitally important. This will be the moment at which we explain the basis for a lot of other things that are going to happen in the story. And remember, that's what the prologue is supposed to do. We're setting the plate for everything else, right? You with me? All right. So what the hell do I do with this? So we're going to follow a similar pattern here, I think. We need to know about Kaleo. About Kaleo's world. And I think in this case, we're going to say about Kaleo's family. All right. Okay, so Cassius is going to tell us something about Kaleo. He's going to tell us something about Kaleo's world. These two things may mesh together. Possibly. I may relabel these. But ultimately, we need to understand something about Kaleo's family, because Kaleo's family is a big part of the price that Kaleo pays for what he does is related to his family, and we need to have a tie between Cassius and Kaleo in terms of what caused Cassius, or what caused Kaleo to do what he did. It was because Cassius did something that made him angry. That something is going to be tied to Kaleo's family. All right? It needs to be something like really visceral. And I can't think of anything more so than someone screws with your family and you go after them. You pop a bolt and you go after them, right? Okay. So now we got to set up some scenes here, and I may change some of these as we go here if I come up with some better concepts here. So let's look at this. So scene 1, what do we need to know about Kaleo? About him as a man? We need to understand that he is a for-life military man. So I'm thinking this is going to be a military scene of some sort. I think where the family is concerned, we're going to have a Kaleo home scene that will feature some kind of a small family home with his wife and his daughter in it, and him with them. So maybe they're all sitting down to have a meal together or something like that, and we get a shot like that, right? And I'm just using I'm using these different size shapes to help me keep track of the different categories of information. Okay, and I think we may have answered our own question here about this scene. So we're going to say this is going to be scene 6. It's going to be some kind of a family meal with wife and child. Okay. Ba-bam. Okay, so scene 6 is kind of that one sort of writes itself. That's why I like this as a tool, because you can fill out the stuff that you know and then figure out where the holes are and then go after that stuff later. All right, so we got that. Interestingly enough, I was thinking the other day while taking a walk, I was thinking about what would the name of his wife be? And it struck me that it might be sort of fun to call her Disabel. So that's become sort of an inside joke with those of you who are part of the Cabal. So maybe we will call her Disabel. So we need to identify the wife. And maybe we'll spell it funny. Disabel. Disabel. Like that. Okay. I'm not liking Kaleo's world, because Kaleo's world is the military. Something tells me we're going to need more than 2 scenes in order to describe him, though. So here's what we do. The military scene is about his world. This one is going to be about Kaleo, the man. And to me, what that means is some kind of a battle scene. Kaleo in the field, doing his Kaleo thing. It'll be as if it were a shot from the past, right? Okay. So a military scene. This is going to be scene 5. And scene 5, I can picture that being soldiers in a line. Kaleo is training them or in charge of them. scene 4. Let's see. Maybe Kaleo surrounded by enemies. And he's fighting them. I'm thinking maybe 2 scenes here. I'm thinking 2 scenes. So let's just call it scene 4.1. This one might be kind of fun to string a couple together. First, we see him fighting, and then we see him receiving some kind of commendation from a general of some sort, someone who looks official. So then we get the impact that, yes, he is a mighty warrior with lots of training. We'll be talking in the narrative about the fact that he's a lifelong soldier. But then we'll also get this. We'll get a second scene that'll tell us something about the fact that he's respected, right? So we'll see him given an award. Then we'll have some narrative about what his life is like now. He's and I think we can imagine how. Remember, Cassius is the one who's describing all of this. And I think we can sort of predict that Cassius is not going to be very generous. All right? So, in all likelihood, he is going to portray Kaleo's current situation as though he were being put out to pasture. And what we will see is Kaleo brought home to train other soldiers. No, he's not in the field anymore. He's not engaged. He's not challenged. Right? All right. So now this brings us to the juicy stuff, which is, what is the conflict? What is the conflict between them, and how do we figure this out? I feel like... Let's take this. Okay. I think we've got one too many nodes here. And this one is going to go away. Okay. What's the inciting incident? Okay, so what's the inciting incident? So we need to know about the situation. I'm not sure how I'm wording this stuff. About the threat. And about the discovery. So about the motivation. Okay. Isabel.
right.
So, when we're talking about the motivation, what I mean there is we need to figure out, okay, what is it that causes Cassius to go after the family of Kaleo, a man who's obviously a dangerous man, a dangerous soldier? There needs to be some motivation there. And I haven't precisely figured out what that is going to be yet. But we need to figure out. I need to figure out what Cassius has to gain by messing with a soldier who trains troops. It's probably not about Kaleo's job. It's got to be about something else. It could be not about Kaleo at all, but more about Kaleo's wife and the position she holds and the access she has. And it might be about a manipulation of her. So maybe he's not going after Disabel to get at Kaleo. He's going after Disabel directly because she's got something that he wants. And what we understand of Cassius would lead me to believe that it's not about sex. It is, but it isn't. Sex is the means to the end. Seduction is the means to the end, right? So he sees weakness in her. He sees her feeling cast aside by her husband, who is preoccupied and drunk. And he pounces. He uses that as an opportunity to get an inroad with her. But I need to figure out what that is. Okay? And the question of what that is will impact the scenes I create. Political power, yes. Maybe she has connections to some politician. Yes. I think that is a great idea. Yep. You can see how he would do the seduction. And the seduction is the easier part to figure out. It's the motivation. Yeah. Okay. Let's let that marinate for a bit. Let's let it marinate for a bit. Okay. So the way that I'm setting up the conflict is, I think, the discovery I can kind of map that out. It's not going to be a caught red-handed situation. So what would this be? 6. This would be scene 9. And I think what we're going to have here is Kaleo. No, it's got to be Kaleo, and Isabel have a conversation. And during this conversation, they talk about real things, and it comes out that she's had this affair. Okay? An argument. and the affair is revealed. Scene 9. Okay. And we can also say that this scene is going to take place in Kaleo's home. And I think this is going to be a two-scener as well. So we have a scene in the house of them having an argument, and then we have a scene of him storming out into the street and her at the door trying to stop him and not being able to, right? This is where he goes off. All right? And he charges outside and he is going to find Cassius. That's where he's headed. He's going to go looking for him. So that is the scene where we see him scrapping for a fight. Okay? All right. Motivation. So if we get down to here about the threat, this one we know too. It's going to be scene 8. This is going to be the seduction. So this will be a scene. I'm not sure where yet. Maybe an undisclosed location. Let's just say it's going to be some kind of a private room, whether it's in an inn or it's in a house or it's in a castle or whatever it is. It's just the two of them there. Okay, and that'll likely be a scene that features an embrace or a kiss or something. All right, just to kind of let us know what's going on there. That's where we're kind of spelling out the affair, right? Oh, yeah, excellent idea. Okay. Yep. Let's see. How about a mysterious necklace, maybe? That might possibly be grounds for another scene, or maybe I can craft it in such a way, right, where we see the necklace lying on the floor in the foreground and them arguing, you know, and the shot is from the floor up, something like that, right? Okay. Okay. So let's think about the motivation. We know it's going to be motivated by power. That's what Cassius wants. So what if Disabel, I mean, she's obviously a middle-class person. She's married to a legate, so she's probably upper middle class. She's not well-to-do. So she probably doesn't come from a well-off family. I think the place that Cassius could take advantage of the situation would be through her connections, which may be through some sort of job that she has in government. Maybe she has access to information because of who she works for. That kind of thing. So let's do this about the motivation. Let's say that Disabel is in some kind of important position working for a political rival of Cassius. And Cassius capitalizes on what he identifies as her emotional pain associated with her floundering marriage. And he takes advantage of that situation to seduce her in an effort to try and get information or dirt about a rival. So if we use that as the setup, we can see something like a scene that takes place in some kind of governmental office, right? Where perhaps we've got Disabel sitting at a desk and Cassius is there, right? And they're talking. Okay, so this is what? Scene 7. Okay. And this may be a two-parter as well. So, okay, here we go. Scene 7.1. Okay, so scene 7.1. Walking down the street together. Having her at a desk makes her seem official. Like he's intruding on her space at that moment. Okay. So we have a scene where, okay, dumb question time. Are the scenes the various screen caps you're going to take? Yes. So each one of these scenes represents a screen capture. So all of this fucking work we're doing here is helping me drive down to what I need in terms of screen captures in order to slap this thing together. Yeah. But look what we're doing at the same time. What we're doing is we're mapping out the story, because remember, I've got to write a whole narrative as well. So the scene numbers across the bottom will tell me the screen captures I need. The long boxes across the middle in each one of these categories will help remind me of the narrative I need to write. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, I need to come up with 2 or 3 paragraphs that describe the inciting incident. So there's going to be written content, and I can look at this and say, okay, in this paragraph, I need to explain his motivations. So what do I need to write about? I need to write about what's important to him, what he sees in Isabel, in Disabel, and what she has that he needs, or what is it he's trying to do, right? So this kind of helps me map out what it is I've got to write from that point, right? So, yeah. That is what we're doing. Okay. It wasn't a dumb question at all, though. It was a very good one. My goal with this was to try to figure out at a minimum what I needed in terms of the number of screenshots, but also it's going to give me a sense for whether or not this is enough. All right, because if I go back and take a look at this, if we go back to the beginning here, I've got 1, 2, 3 scenes. And that narrative that you listen to, let's see, it is 3 minutes and 17 seconds in length. All right, so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, man, are people going to want to be looking at the same scene for a full minute? I don't think so. So what that tells me is that I'm going to need to put some more scenes in here. I'm thinking on each one of these nodes, I'm probably going to want to try to have at least 6 scenes. All right. So one scene kind of moving or interesting and moving in parallax for 30 seconds, you know, and changing out every 30 seconds or so, something like that. I don't know. And so ultimately what I'll do is I'll put this together. I'll assemble it all in Adobe Premiere, and then I'll play it through and I'll say, does it feel natural or does it feel too slow and sluggish? And does that mean I need to edit the content, or does that mean I need more screenshots so I can move through them more quickly? So, yeah. Irie. So we're going back here. Okay. So what is the outcome of the incident? So we have, this is the inciting incident. And the first scene is going to be confrontation. Then we're going to have the killing. In the aftermath. Okay, so the confrontation, I can see us having, I want to have another political setting. All right. The killing then will also be... This will be... the death blow, right? So it's going to be kind of the same political setting, but it's going to be a different version of it. There's going to be one where they're kind of facing off with each other like there's an argument happening. So political setting isn't the right word because these are all going to be in the same setting. Political setting argument. Political setting death blow. And political setting captured. Captured. Make it wide. Okay. All right, so this part is a little bit easier. 9. So we're into up to scene 10, right? Scene 10. Ah. So we see a standoff. Then let's do scene 10.1. In this one, we see drawn swords. Then scene 11. This is where Kaleo runs Cassius through. Through? Running him through? It's probably not right. Okay. Then let's do this. Let's do scene 11.1. And then I would like kind of a dramatic scene here where Kaleo stands over the body, dripping sword in hand. Now, the cool thing about doing this is a series of Photoshop slides is that I can make that blade drip blood, which is cool. That's going to be awesome. You can't really do that in the game, right? So I'll be able to get an effect here that I think is going to be pretty cool. Okay, awesome. Now the aftermath. Okay. Kaleo fights the guards. No. Kaleo fights other Imperial soldiers. Let's make it even worse, right? Okay. Kaleo is overwhelmed. So I thought what I would do on this one is have it be more soldiers than he can possibly defeat, right? So he goes from standing over the body to suddenly he's dispatched a couple more guards, and we see a couple more soldiers coming in the door, to the final scene, which is him surrounded on all sides by men bristling with armor and weapons, and he's overwhelmed. Okay? And then that sets us up for the final outcome. Right? Okay. I am going to go back and I'm going to add scenes. Just because I think I'm going to need to have at least a scene every 30 seconds or so. And I'm just making a judgment call based on the writing that I've done so far. I've written 3 paragraphs, and it takes approximately 1 minute for me to recite the contents of each paragraph. And as I compare that, with the content as broken down into scenes for those first 3, I can kind of make a guesstimation here. So this can be 6.1. Okay. Let's go back up here and do the same thing here. I'm missing a little bit of information on these initial scenes here, but that's okay because I've already written the narrative on these, so I have a better understanding of these scenes than I do the other ones. So I may come back here and do some more later. Okay. Very good. So now basically we've got 2 scenes per node. I think that's all right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go retrieve a beverage. I will be right back. Okay, so question, will there be flashback scenes throughout the play? I don't know. I'm not sure. I was trying to find a way to do this that wouldn't require flashbacks. I don't know if this does that or not. I mean, having Decianus there periodically, the fact that Cassius is sort of a blast from the past, every time that Kaleo encounters Cassius, which isn't going to be all the time, but in certain times, there's going to be lots and lots of discussion associated with things that happened in the past, lots of references to things that happened in the past. Plus, we'll also get references to the past throughout the narration. So I'm thinking I'm probably not going to need it. So woo. All right, let's do this last one. Let's knock it out. All right. Okay. So, how does the outcome of this event change the world? How does it change the world? And we have to keep in mind here that this is a story that is being told to us from the point of view of Cassius. So we have the trial of Kaleo Ferrata. Political upheaval? Yes. So there's going to be a trial. There are going to be political consequences, right? And there's going to be military upheaval. Okay. So, with the trial, I think we can see some kind of a court setting. Maybe we have Kaleo kneeling in the middle, in the middle of the floor with his hands bound, and he's got several people up on a dais or a podium passing judgment on him, right? That kind of thing. All right. So for political upheaval, I think that we will see we could see something like politicians arguing. I think what we'll do is we'll call it ooh, how about this? A funeral setting. So we've got Kaleo's vision, Kaleo's experience, which is the court setting, and Cassius' experience, which is the funeral setting, right? Something like that. And then in the ranks, this is the military upheaval. Okay. Let's do this. Trial. Court setting. Political upheaval. Now remember, one of the things that is imperative that we do, that this prologue, we have to come out of this prologue with the audience having an understanding of not just what happened, but how this thing that happened is going to affect the story going forward. And what it's going to do to the story going forward is it's going to give our protagonist this status as a simplici, or an unpledged. So if we come away from this prologue without people understanding that he has been cast out of the military, we will have failed. So I will have failed. Not you. Me. Let's be honest. So that's kind of what those last two items are for. Military upheaval and problems in the ranks. That kind of thing. You guys are not failures. This is on me if it doesn't work. Okay, so scene one, the trial. Kaleo being sentenced. Sometimes I forget where these fucking things go. So that first scene is going to be Kaleo being sentenced. And I think this one will probably be the same room, but it's going to be Kaleo being hauled away to the dungeon. Okay, that's an easy enough one. Now the political upheaval one, this one could be interesting. So on this one, I would like to see some kind of a funeral with Cassius' body on display or in a coffin or something like that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. I'm trying to think of a way to do it right now, and I can't. But I'll think about that. And then I thought what would be cool is we could emphasize the political discord by having two political factions appearing to argue with one another at the funeral. I could do that. I want to try to accomplish as much of this as I can without having to make mods, especially one-offs. But in some cases, it might be unavoidable. The good thing is when we map this out, once I got this all mapped out and I kind of understand what the scenes need to be, now I can start thinking about how to piece these together, and I have some time to come up with solutions to the stickier problems. Okay, so let's say we've got, the scene is the funeral of Cassius Decianus, and the discord, the upheaval, is shown in scene 2 by two groups of politicians, presumably opposite parties, arguing with one another at the funeral, which is bad form in any case, but it would emphasize how, I guess, sort of polarized the political system is. Plus, it also gives us a really great opportunity to have Cassius sprinkle in some irony about how now that he's not here to set them against one another, they're still fighting, right? Even without him there to pit them against one another, they're still at each other's throats, which I think would be a really sort of nice thing to add. Okay? The military upheaval. I think what I'd like to do here Now, this is where we need to emphasize what this means. What does this conflict mean? Okay? And we said that when he ends up getting tried and sentenced, we're going to say that this divides the military. This divides the military down this line of people who support Kaleo and think he did the right thing and people who do not. This is the divide between what we're calling the Colovian or provincial soldiers and the blue bloods, or the pure Netic, the sort of Netic Imperials, right? So this scene could be soldiers watching Kaleo go to prison. So we've got Kaleo, hands bound, being marched off to prison, and a group of soldiers standing watching it happen. And then here, we've got two factions of soldiers that are facing off with one another, looking like they're ready to come to blows over the issue. Right? And this is our opportunity to have Cassius explain what unpledged means, what the divide is in the military. So if we take a look at this entire thing, Jesus, that's too small. If we take a look at this entire thing, it basically marches us through now everything that we need to make sure we tell them. Remember, it got one shot to lay this out for them, and this is not only going to be the prologue to the story, but it's also going to be a trailer. I'm hoping to use this to reel people in and get them so interested in the story they'll want to stick around and see how it turns out. So I feel like this needs to be really well thought out. So there we go. All right. So what do we got? We got about 30. Yeah, we got about 30 scenes that I have to capture. 30 scenes in which to explain to them what all of this means. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And what this will do is I'll refer back to this not only when getting the screenshots, but I will refer back to this very, very heavily when I start writing, because I'm going to be preoccupied with making sure that I write this in this in this speaking style of Cassius. So I need to make damn sure that I'm getting it right, and I don't want to be worrying about the structure while I try to do that. So this is going to get me there. Woohoo! Woohoo! Okay, so what I'm going to do here, just to be safe, I'm okay with the story. Name. Okay. Let's publish this to a file. Now what it does is Twine is going to save this as an HTML file. I'm going to copy it and add it to my story archive. It's going to call it Twine. We're going to back it up. We're going to add it in there. So if I ever need to come back to this, the one problem with Twine is that if you're using it online, it is heavily reliant on cookies. So if you nuke your cookies, you're kind of potentially getting rid of your story as well. So building these things out, saving them out as HTML is a good way to go, because you can always come into Twine, even on another computer, and import your HTML inside and pop, there it is, and you can start working again, okay? Just The other thing about Twine that is pretty handy is there is a client application for this on both PC and Mac. So if you just want to run the client, you can do that. I find the browser version to be fine. I actually kind of like it better. Okay. Alrighty, ladies and germs. All right. So we're pretty good to go with that. Let's pack that away. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is I will give you a run through on how I'm making some of this art. Okay. So we're going to pull up the actions window here. Okay, so I archived some shit somewhere here. Did I not? Of course I did. Where would it be? Oh, perhaps I put it in some generic location. Design resources. Actions. Watercolor. Action set. We're going to load that. Now, I'm not dead set on which one I'm going to use yet. The acrylics are pretty damn nice, too. So let's load the acrylics. Well, the other thing we need to do is we go in here to edit. What is it? Presets, preset manager. All right, and I'm going to load some brushes because some of these have custom brushes. So the acrylics, got these guys. Watercolors, got these guys. Okay. So let's close that up. And I'm going to save these changes. All right, then. So let's create new. 1920 by 1080. 300. Let's change this image size. Okay, big size, same aspect ratio. All right. Let's go out and grab us a screenshot. I'm going to try to use one I haven't before. Let's kind of flip through these. Ooh, wait a minute. That's a nice one. Oh, God, that's a good one, too. Oh, shit. Okay, I'm going to grab this one. This is 47. Oops. Okay. So I want this screenshot to be the actual locked background. So I'm going to do layer, new, background from layer. Okay. I'm going to create a new layer called fill. And I'm just going to pick a color. Let's go with kind of a orangish. All right, now we should have some new brushes here. These acrylic ones. These are the brushes loaded by that. In this case, I probably don't need to worry about using those brushes. Those are the brushes that will be used by the action when it does its thing. But what I want to do is put a big old blob of color in there. Now I don't want it to be an absolute circle, so let's increase this brush size. And we're going to start just going to roughen up the edges. And I think what I'll do is I'm just going to adjust the opacity of this so I can see the image behind. So I want to take advantage of things that might be interesting to look at here. So we'll make kind of a little point that extends down in here. What I'm doing now basically is I'm kind of creating a little bit of a map that's going to tell this effect where, you know, what part of the image I want it to pay attention to most. And hopefully, if this works right, it'll be good. All right, let's stick with that. Let's see if this works. I don't know if it will or not. If not, then I'll go back and review the procedure again. I'm going to remove this. Okay, let's set that focus point again. Say about there. Some bitch. You can almost think of this as almost like a nav mesh in a way. And it doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, we don't want it to be, and it's better if it's not. What I'm creating here, we aren't even going to see at all in the final image. And I made it yellow just because it's easy for me to see as I'm creating it. The color I'm using here has no bearing on how the final product turns out. Okay. And there's some interesting things up here that might be fun to have a little clearer. Okay. So let's try that. All right. The suspense. The suspense. Still working. It's creating layers. It's applying effects to those layers. Then it's applying filters. And in the final outcome here, it will categorize all of these things so that I can go back and I can make adjustments. So you can see I'm not anything near the artist you guys think I am. Sometimes I use Photoshop Actions. What I like about Actions is that once the action is built, you can be sure that anytime you activate it, it will apply the effects the same way every single time consistently, which in this case is going to be super important because I'm trying to create a theme that I can remain consistent with across, you know, the entire series from beginning to end. So it needs to be something that I can apply quickly and easily, and that looks good. Now it's applying brush effects in layers. Takes a while. It runs a lot faster on my Mac, which is really interesting. I have this little Mac laptop, but Adobe products just run much more efficiently on Macs. And I mean, this is my gaming machine, which, you know, is pretty damn good hardware. But my Mac will do this in a quarter of the time. Still going. If you've got Photoshop, you can get all kinds of free stuff out there. Just go out to Google and just look for, you know, free Photoshop brushes, free Photoshop actions, free Photoshop textures, backgrounds, free Photoshop PSD files. Go out there and you'll find tons and tons of stuff for free. Just Google it and you'll get lists and lists of it. It's amazing. Yeah, I can't. I mean, if I tried to do all of this myself, it would take me forever. And then even then, I'd have to go back and create the action. I've created my own Photoshop actions for all kinds of things. I used to use it for image conversion a lot, where I would take a whole stack of screenshots, convert them all to JPEGs, and save them out with a specific naming convention. You know, and do that for 100 images at a time, you know, stuff like that. Fantastic for those things too. Okay, so it's processed a good portion of the image. Now it's going in and starting to do overlays to make it look like everything has been painted on watercolor paper. Okay. Now, this one, I'm probably not going to keep because I don't like the shape of it. But I've got these different layers in here that I can start playing around with. I can start de-emphasizing certain things. Okay. You get the idea, though. This is kind of how it works. I hate this one, though. All right. Let's nuke this one. No, not going to save that one. What I do want to do, however, let's go to Design Resources, Acrylic, Help Text, Notepad. Okay, the acrylic one is kind of interesting, but it's a bit more labor intensive. Okay, so open the photo, load the action, load the brushes, yes. Okay, this is one that'll render much larger size. Okay, let's try this one. So this one will be 300 DPI. Create. We'll adjust the image size. Gonna make sure it's linked. 3500. Okay. Okay. I think I'm going to use that same image. That one is actually pretty good. I think that was 47. Yes. All right, let's review our directions again. Make sure the opacity of the brush is set to 100%. Here's our brush. It is set to 100%. Check, check, check. We're using RGB mode, yes. We're using 8-bit, yes. Okay. Image size is between 300 and 4,000 pixels at a resolution of 300 DPI, yes. Your main image should be set as a background. Okay, this is our main image. We want that to be set as a background. So we'll get rid of the background. Layer, new. Okay, now it is background. Okay. All right, now there is a video that you can look at that helps you with this one, and I'm certain that it had me create a layer here called fill. But this didn't work for me last time, so I'm trying to understand why. So let's grab our brush. Okay. Let's try it. We'll see what happens. Was there something about the way this was installed, maybe? Yeah. Should I unlock it? If I unlock it, it's not the background anymore. Select is not available. What would that be about? Brush is correct. Okay, let's trash it. Okay, let's try it again. I don't know why. I feel like it's not loading properly. Okay. So let's set this again. Back on from layer. Fuck. The hell? What's the issue here? Selects the background, it selects the brush, shows the current layer. Let's continue. Yeah, no worky. I'm not getting any joy from this. It's not working. Or is it? Oh, it's going through the steps. It's just making me do them all manually. Could take a while at this rate. But it's moving. It's possible it was an action made for a version of Photoshop that's different than this too. But it ran on my Mac, so makes a lot more sense for me to run these on my Mac, honestly. Let's see if we can get through this. This could be painful. Not available, not available. That's nuts. Yeah, this is going to turn out weird. It's not going to work. We'll see. I mean, it's acting like it's executing these things, but I can't be sure. Oh, man. It's going to be rugged. So I'm thinking about these, and what I'd like to do is some process like this to process all of the images that go into the prologue. But the watercolors that I've done so far are not clear enough, right? We'll lose so many details that people won't understand the scenes. So I need to select my technique pretty carefully for those. And then once I determine what that is, that would hopefully be something that I can reuse on other media that I create associated with the series, so we have like a consistent look across everything. That's what I would like to do. So we'll see. Yeah, it's like some of these layers are shut off. It's really odd. Like it's only executing about 50% of the commands for whatever reason. The only thing I can think of is that it's a versioning issue. But we'll see what the final product looks like. It might be all right. I don't know. Regardless, I won't be producing these on this machine. I'll probably go to my other Mac and just do it there and move them over. Something like that. Christ on a cracker. Hunding's cock. Holy cow. Everybody having fun yet? Is this how you imagined spending a Wednesday night with me executing Photoshop actions that aren't working properly? Christ. Can you imagine making one of these actions? I've done it before on a small scale, but I can't imagine making one this gigantic. Delete. Yes? I don't know. Sure. Delete everything. Yeah, let's do that. You know, the other thing that I have been thinking about quite a lot lately that is unavoidable is that this story is supposed to have a bit of a dark bent to it, right? But you guys saw how I was improvising my role play the other night. It was beyond silly. And honestly, every time I try to create a story that has darkness in it, it doesn't turn out that way. Because all the ludicrous stuff in the game forces me down this path of having to deal with it, and I deal with adversity through humor. And so even characters that are supposed to be dark, like Idastog, you know, he ends up just cracking wise all the time. And I guarantee you the same thing will happen with Kaleo. And so if there's going to be darkness in the story, the darkness has to be in the narrative, the things that I write. Which isn't a bad thing, but I need to figure out how to juxtapose the darkness of the narrative with sort of the humor that's obviously going to be part of my improvisational role play, I guess. You know? Yeah. It basically did nothing. It skipped half the commands. Yeah, I'll have to figure out why this isn't working. Maybe it's the fact that it's on Windows. I don't know. Anyway, that is how to not be successful with Photoshop actions, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance. I am going to knock off for the evening. Thank you all very much for hanging with me. I'm sorry I couldn't get Barbarian going tonight. The problem there, of course, is that I have created a whole bunch of custom mods in order to make Kaleo's story work, and I cannot switch profiles until I have packaged up those mods and they are safely stashed away. As soon as I switch profiles and it starts reloading things, I will lose all of that work. So I need to be very deliberate about how I go through and do that. That's what set me back this time around. The fact remains that we do not have many episodes of Barbarian left before that story is over. I'm predicting that we will hit the conclusion of Barbarian sometime in August. That would be my guess, probably early to mid-August, which sets us up to start Kaleo's story officially sometime in August or early September. My hope is that I can sort of, get this launched before we go into our marathon in mid-September. That would be great. So I've got a lot of work to do here. Thank you all so much for hanging with me tonight and helping me get through the prologue framework. It was probably some of the best organizational work that I've done on a series. In fact, I will tell you that bar none, I have put more time and effort into the setup of this story than ever before with any of my previous stories. And I think that I owe that in large part to you guys. Exposing you guys to how this process works has helped to keep me on track, and it has inspired me to dig deeper. And then when we add on top of that the custom music that we've got going, the bigger selection of custom music we've got going, all the new graphics, and a whole passel of awesome mods made by Bayofish, I think, I don't know. I'm holding out hope that this will be the best, sort of most cohesive story I've done to date, and I'm very excited about it. And I want to thank you guys for contributing to that. I really do appreciate it. All right, thank you all very much. I appreciate your attendance, and I will see you next time. Good night. There are surprisingly few who understand the true nature of political power. Many think they know it, and they espouse traits such as idealism, integrity, tenacity, intractability, when in fact it is nothing of the sort. These are, in fact, the qualities of base-born, colorless hacks who infect the halls of government. These disabilities they refer to as laudable traits turn the ears of a certain few who worship at the altar of lost causes, but they will never gain a man the power to truly govern. I find it amusing to observe them as they totter around the capital like infants, playing at games of politics and stacking alliances like so many wooden blocks. I have come to refer to them as the hackneyed. The hackneyed are filled to bursting with bluster and puffed-up grandeur. Much like roosters, they strut about, crowing of their many accomplishments and perceived status. They can often be found gathered in great circles, pecking one another into staggering delirium.
Once in this state of sweaty, red-faced pique, the hackneyed will often engage in what I have come to know as the explosion of mutually assured ruin, in which they devour one another in a great burst of political bloodletting. In these epic battles, the hackneyed will attempt to cripple their adversaries with great ideological hammers, raining down blows, crushing blows of hyperbole, until one party remains standing, whimsical and punch-drunk from the effort of it all. This is when I take action. When the smell of blood is in the water, I slowly circle the crippled and unaware hackneyed as they frantically tread water. When the end comes, it comes quickly, but it is not without pain. The realization that one has been laid low by one's own values is often a shock to the system, and one I have seen written plainly on more than one face during the course of my political career. The plight of the hackneyed is heartbreaking. It is the vacant gaze of utter and complete devastation and realization. It betrays the devastation at the lost promise of power and the realization that I was its engineer.